Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now we are back with our ranking videos. Now we did take a little bit of a break, longer than anticipated because of Wheel of Fortune and then some personal days, but we definitely do need to finish the 2024 champion ranking, then immediately jump into the class relative ranking, class top options, top champions in the game, and so on and so forth. So much more to do that you guys can probably expect 1 to 2 ranking videos a day for most of the time, and other than the days that I'm going to be completely out preparing for the wedding. So we basically got to the bottom 13 champions, bottom 14 champions. So here we can see how the rankings had changed from the initial ones in the December-January. And obviously, previously we had 3 DNRs, did not rank: Ice Fiend, Deathless, Thanos, and Deathless She-Hulk. Now these champions are ranked. And effectively, there are some changes. Some champions have slipped down, some champions have made their way up. But obviously, this is hindsight as well as my own personal experience and opinions. So the mandatory disclaimer, I'm going to try and make it quick this time around, so we can jump into the more exciting bit faster. But these are a mixture of my own personal opinions as well as game relevance and trends. Now, this will definitely also reflect the competitive state of the game much more so than the casual. In other words, these rankings are based on the champion value and the champions that you use when losing matters. In reality, with very few exceptions in the last several years, just about every champion can do a ton for you when you acquire it. For instance, Deathless King Groot, or I don't know, Destroyer. You pick up Destroyer early, you can do a ton of content with Destroyer, and there will be times when he's absolutely amazing. But for the most part, people do watch these videos, and meta players and competitive players rank these champions based on which champions you're going to invest most resources, most catalysts to. And only reason to do that, to chase the highest rank and level in the game, really is the competitive scenario where you play against other players and where every bit of advantage matters. For instance, Deathless She-Hulk is a great champion, but if I don't need her competitively too much for Alliance War or something, then I did just about everything that I needed her for at rank 2. And she destroyed Necropolis, and there's no reason for me to take her to rank 4. Therefore, she's lower on this list than some of the other champions will be at the end. For instance, Bullseye, Serpent. Even though for specific areas of the game she will be better. Hope that makes sense. Again, just about everything in this game still can realistically be done with 6 stars or rank 2 7 stars, including, the Epoch of Pain, including Necropolis, including Wheel of Fortune, so on and so forth. Wheel of Fortune? Wheel of Fate. Anyways, but where you do rank the champions to the highest level is the Battlegrounds, is the Alliance War. So, that is what we are ranking for, realistically. And my own personal opinion on these rank ups and rank ups in general as well is that I want to quote-unquote get my investment back. So when I rank a champion, I want them to help me earn, to help me get more rank up resources while being more competitive and ranking higher in the game modes and beating up challenges. So anyways, let's get to it. So we finished at spot number 14, so we're gonna start with spot number 13 of 2024 champions. Let's get to it. In spot number 13 we have Scream. Seems actually a bit lower than she used to, because with the release of a handful of tech defenders, she's not really destroying everything in the class, unlike some of the other counterparts. I still think she's absolutely fantastic. She's a bit more mixed bag. However, you do see her in competitive plays here and there, and obviously there are people who absolutely love her, but she is far from must-have staple type champion. There are situations where she's absolutely indispensable. I do think her stock might rise slightly with the release of Spider-Woman being a significant dual threat champion, because she does stop the evade against Spider-Verse heroes, which is quite awesome. And then obviously against tech champions, you mess with them armor up buffs. But realistically, she's not the greatest against some of the tech defenders now either. Overall, I do absolutely love the character. I do think she's awesome. She was one of my most wanted champions for quite a while, and I think that kind of showed what Scream is. Scream is a very exciting champion that's very fun to play, but I struggled to get her early, and then once I did get her, just never really had a right proper use for Scream, where I know that I could take that champion up to rank 4, but there was always like the more important investment somewhere for either specific meta or specific task that I'm trying to achieve. She's still absolutely a champion that I enjoy using and I want to use more of, but she isn't quite high on the totem pole at the moment, and I do think with the release of several of the newer defenders, and she might not necessarily be the best answer to some of them as well. So I think she's a great champion. I think, she's fun. If you invest in her, you will get use out of her. At the same time, I do think at the moment, especially with newer champions getting released, that might be just slightly more versatile and adaptable options. However, I don't want to say anything too bad about Scream, because that doesn't necessarily answer all the questions that we want a Cosmic Rank Up to answer right now. So Scream, fortunately, spawn number 13. Spawn number 12, Spiral. And Spiral would have been lower, honestly. Spiral is, however, present in the metagame, which is the reason why I took her over Scream up there. And in fact, every single champion from this point forward is going to be quite present in the metagame as well. And Spiral, no exception. But realistically, we all know exactly why we run Spiral. Spiral is the more successful version of Isophine, basically. The thing that gives Spiral the added value is also that she is quite a handy counter to the Dark Phoenix, which we obviously do need more of. But realistically, Spiral, you could argue, is just about the best Serpent counter, and plenty of instances she's one of the very few Serpent counters that will work, and she's a bit different because she doesn't rely on Nullify, and she consistently gets the Power Steal, and she can dex the level 2. For instance, in the next Invade meta, Spiral is going to be one of the very, very, very few champions that will actually be able to take down that Serpent. And that's kind of her claim to fame. If you're looking at just about everything else, she's a bit reminiscent of Isophine, just slightly better at everything, which again is the difference in rankings here. Because, Spiral is, to me, a slightly bit undertuned in a generic matchup. In her desired matchups, she's great. She can be fantastic. She's very, very useful. Again, primary champions that you will use Spiral for will be Serpent and Dark Phoenix. Now, that said, she is, I think, more capable than Isophine in non-ideal matchups. She is not, completely a one-trick pony. It's just that she turns from being, a very, very good option to being a serviceable option for a handful of random fights, like Sentinel, for instance, is somebody that you can do with her because of the amount of dot damage that you do, especially play, the fight entirely well. And her Sig ability does make her viable for several of the hazard chip lanes and does give her value in Alliance War because she can deal with Shock, Incinerate, Poison quite a lot, and she does it quite well, especially at high Sig. And then that region on block. And there you go, that's Spiral. I think Spiral is all. I think Spiral is a good character. I think she's almost great. In order to make her great, you'd want her to have like a little bit better damage numbers, maybe a little bit easier time to use her. But that is a skill ask, but still, that would definitely make her more popular. Overall, I think she's a solid champion. She's a good champion. We all know exactly, why she is where she is. She's a target built, kind of like goal-oriented champion. She is one of the best options for Serpent. She does answer now Dark Phoenix, and, she's serviceable in a few other matchups. That's it. It's just, in my opinion, just about always kind of better version of Isophine that does things completely differently, but it's, a bit similar in a way. So, that said, let's move on to number 11, and that's Negasonic. And the thing with Negasonic is, she's useful. She is. Problem with Negasonic is that Dazzler came out, and Dazzler does most of what Negasonic does, just better. And she isn't as squishy, and she's faster. The reason why Negasonic is useful, because she just destroys the entirety of skill class, or just about. Realistically speaking, I hate Negasonic. Not necessarily as a character, and I don't mind her as a character too much, but what they did with her kit. She does not seem as much as coherent champion, more like amalgamation of a ton of abilities that basically puts up a middle finger to the entire skill class. That is the way I view Negasonic. And then they balance that out with a fairly mid damage and making her squishy. She has some, defensive use as well. She can be kind of annoying with her, non-contacts and then the evade. But overall, we all know exactly what she's there for. While fighting skill champions, the opponents bleed away, then true effects suffer 100% ability accuracy. Additionally, precognition does not go on cooldown from evading counterattack. So she's made to destroy Atuma, Korg, Bullseye, Killmonger, and everybody else that skill class throws at you, with the exception of Thekiryu, obviously, because she does not have the damage or does not stop the second life. There you go. That's what she does. And we do see her. We use her. And she's, again, just kind of exactly that. She's built to destroy a ton of skill champions. She's mid at best in like a generic matchup. She is quite squishy, and I don't think anybody really likes her. That is Negasonic. Can't deny her usefulness. Again, she is single-handedly one of those champions that's putting skill class on the back foot. Well, not single-handedly. Mutant class is getting quite a bit of help, but she's definitely in the mix. Because she counters every, or just about every skill defender. Again, she's not like the fastest, but she's, against skill champion, she's not particularly slow. And she's quite handy to use, and as long as you do not miss a parry, or, do not take too many hits in a block, you're going to be finishing with very high health. And there we go. That's it. She inflicts stun, incinerates, non-contact attacks, doesn't take damage back from the skill abilities. Parry stun, can't be prevented, and opponents, bleeds does not work, so Bullseye doesn't do any extra damage, and runs over the skill class. She doesn't do it slowly. She jogs over the skill class, for the most part. But yeah, I really don't like her as champion. Honestly, her base stats are awful. Well, not completely awful, but just squishy. And fairly slow. And she doesn't feel great to play. But she does her job. So, there you go. We got Negasonic spot number 11. Now, top 10. And top 10 is Jack. I kind of wish I could put Jack in higher. And to be honest, like, depending where the new champions go and how significant Captain Britain is and a few more, like Jean Grey, for instance, Jack might actually end up going higher as well. Because at the moment, his stock is up on the rise, in my opinion. Jack is becoming more and more useful again with the release of Jean Grey, with the release or the buff of Captain Britain, because he is just about the best counter for those fights that exist in game. And it's actually eerily similar than Bastion. And here's the thing, I think Jack is much better for battlegrounds than Bastion is, or at the very least better. And I think Bastion is probably better for like Alliance War. So, depending on, which game once you focus, that's whichever champion you're going to value more. But for the most part, it's very simple to play, very simple to use, and he just has like these few, little things that make him very effective. Like how he's not critting, like how he can parry projectiles, so that automatically makes him answer to a handful of things, like how he's immune to reverse controls. And, that's just about all he needs. He's like one of the more basic and simple, straightforward characters that we have had released in recent times. Now, against Mutant Champion, he switches to Plasma. In general, it's Incinerate. Now he's level 2. Also, inflicts Poison. That level 2 does a fair bit of damage. You do want to intercept now and then. Ideally, you do want to throw that special 2 after your heavy in order to make that crit more and do more damage. Does get increased ability accuracy, which, is kind of my personal beef with him, because he doesn't do it fast enough, so he wouldn't take the crit fail damage from Domino. And if he's unawakened, you still end up taking a little bit of damage from Domino. But he just about counters everything that you need him to counter in the Mutant class. He's a good Domino counter, especially awakened. He's great Onslaught counter. And then, he's obviously great against Mr. Sinister, because he doesn't leave any, long-lasting dots on the Sinister from his base hits, and he does great, so he deals with that. And then, obviously Captain Britain, Jean Grey, and Dust as well. He's good against Dust. There's no issue with that. Yeah, he's, solid, good champion. and his stock at the moment is on the up and up. If I was to do this list like a month later, perhaps he would land higher, but instead of that, we're going to move on to our next champion, spot number 9, and that's Dust. Now again, here's the thing. I love and I hate Dust. I hate Dust because of Kabam, and she's blowing up my phone. Honestly, the lag issue is, at this point, embarrassing from the Kabam's half. I would enjoy her more, but it is impossible to deny that Dust has, made herself to be a mainstay mutant dual purpose champion. Now, a ton of people do underestimate Dust offensively, which is one of the more interesting things because she switches off a ton of opponents' abilities when you parry. So whenever opponent or their block is struck, medium attacks, blah, blah, blah. But basically, whenever she parries, you force opponent to glance, and that turns off a ton of abilities, and that turns off a ton of nodes as well, and that is super useful. And then obviously Sandstorm, damage, not awful, but could be a little bit better. She, still can do fairly well. With that grid passive, she can also ignore the unstoppables when you do need to go for like that quick special spammy finish. And she's a serviceable counter to, a handful of matchups for sure. So she has her uses offensively. I have her used successfully against like Tuma and Nick Fury. And pending on the meta, she's, somewhat viable against Bullseye. She is bleed immune. And there are more, and obviously there's Korg and, in general, more of those as well. But, defensively, she just also happens to be one of those kind of like problematic kits. And we have definitely seen the increase in Dust's usage quite significantly over the last several months. She often happens to be like a very finicky defender. Currently, she's very annoying because if you are aggressive against her, that signature ability that gives opponent the sand debuffs from her being attempted to be bled is very annoying. Now in Wade meta, at level 2 is going to be tricky to wage. Yeah, she always has counters, but she is kind of like solid enough two-way champion that you see players in West use, rank her, play her, and I do think she's kind of underestimated. Like, if she wasn't lagging my phone, there's a very, very solid chance I would have ranked 4 her by now. At the moment, I do have her at rank 3. Because I do think she's sneakily good. I really do think she's sneakily good offensively as well. And obviously, defensively, I don't think I have to explain to you. She is a bane of existence to many players. Alright, let's move on to spot number 8, and that is going to be Prowler. Now, Prowler has actually decreased a little bit. I still think he's awesome. I think one of the biggest weaknesses on the Prowler genuinely is the diabolically evil way that Kabam made his Sig to scale. Because once you get, good or better with Prowler, it's a very solid champion. He can counter a ton of things. Immunity to the Falter can be handy as well. Obviously, not as good as flat-out immunity to miss effects, but still, that's useful. He has 115% ability accuracy. That makes him a domino counter. And then, he can force opponents to miss himself. And then he has his medium attacks, which are non-contact and cannot be evaded. And, you can use him relatively well against Bullseye, especially if he's skilled enough. But also, because of his non-contact mediums, he's quite easy to use against random matchups like Korg. And that is like one of the crazy things about him. He can do a ton of very random matchups. And I have, taken him to rank 3 myself recently, but my Prowler isn't like super high sig, and that's my one biggest issue with him is like that I wish he had like a better damage output. But once you get more accustomed to his rotation, you definitely find more and more avenues where you can use Prowler and the ways you can use him well. So I do think he's currently very significant, very popular champion. Again, the game might be changing a bit, and he might be fighting with Jack for his spot, pending where the metas go. At the moment, I do believe that Prowler is still playing a very major and significant role in this game, and I think he has a proven track record thus far. And again, doesn't crit, so he's great Mr. Sinister counter. His access, well, you don't really typically tend to use level 1 much, but you do have access to Taunt. You do have access to that Incinerate if need be on heavy attack to enhance your damage as well. Then his main damage source being Ruptures, quite good because hardly anything is Rupture immune. And one of the best things about him is definitely that Power Drain Power block after the opponent's special attacks. It just enables him to be significantly more aggressive and gives you kind of like much more confident and comfortable place to use him and, you know, to go through his rotations. So I think he's cool. I think he has proved it, and I think he deserves his ranking number 8. Number 7, I'm going to give it to Nefaria. And the thing with Nefaria is there's like 2 big issues with Nefaria. Realistically, versatility-wise, he's crazy. Like, as long as there's some regen involved, as long as there's some power gain involved, man is beasting. And the methods he works very well. And the coolest thing about him is, you know, as long as you do get his ionic recharge working and you get to steal opponent's health, and as long as you do, you know, get to mitigate their power, then he's almost impossible to kill, man. He's such a safe character that you can finish fights with like just about full health bar. His, you know, biggest kind of downfall for most part is pretty much speed. I actually got in a little bit of a fight with one of my viewers, not a fight, a discussion with one of my viewers recently, who tried to convince me that Nefaria is like a fast offense, which I mean, he isn't. He really isn't. And he's great. I like him a lot, and he has a lot of very cool interactions, and I think he's one of the more versatile science champions, if not champions, period, in the game. But the one thing he's kind of lacking to be, you know, more dominant than he is, because at the moment he's more so a meta merchant. He's not the type of champion that you will see every meta and, you know, everywhere is in like auto pick. You do need to pick and choose when and how you use Count Nefaria, because you do need, you know, those extra boosts that he gets from specific nodes or specific interactions. But overall, though, I think he has aged very well. I think he's a very, very solid addition to the game. I think you're much better off having him than not having him, where he can, you know, mitigate and deal with regeneration and opponent's power gain is quite awesome. Also, all the immunities and resistances are great, and the survivability is just insane on the character, which is, you know, making him very attractive there. Again, if he was a wee bit faster, I think he could actually land up higher on the list. I do think he's an amazing champion, though. So there you go. So we have Count Nefaria here, and this is, again, in my opinion, just kind of like a testament to how awesome last year was of champions and how very few of them are like insanely OP, even though we do have a handful of those for sure. But there are a lot of champions like Prowler, like Jack, like Count Nefaria, like Dust, that are just very, very good. But moving on, and I kind of downgraded Enchantress a bit. And the reason being is, initially, when Enchantress came out, she was a nightmare fuel. Still kind of is, but here's the difference. Unless there is something helping her being more dangerous, not just that scary at all. Yes, there will always be the fights when she just says, no, you lose. You know, when you miss 4 times in a row trying to punish her, you know, heavy attack to get rid of a spell, and you get cornered and there's nothing you can do. I agree, those fights will always happen. They are frustrating. There's always a weeny bit of a chance that, you know, you're gonna get wrecked. Or, you know, maybe a little bit better. But unless she gets like a ton of extra power, or unless there's going to be like an invade node or something else that is significantly helping her, there are just so many champions that run through her. She doesn't need like a specific counter. And it kind of feels a bit more like an RNG fight. And again, in most cases, you'll be fine. Sometimes you won't be. But now we're seeing like more and more kind of like science champions that are better at countering her. And obviously we still have, you know, Silk. But besides that, you know, you can see Enchantress getting nuked down with all sorts of variety champions, and she does not require a specific counter. The reason why she still is as high is because of that, you know, coin flip of a chance. If the AI is going to screw you over and she's not going to come in for an intercept, or if you're going to get very, very unlucky with her miss spell, there's always a chance to kind of like, you know, take hits in the face and be in a very bad position against her. And then there are the meta merchant abilities. Just like I mentioned for Count Nefaria, for Enchantress is kind of similar. Because there are methods when she does turn out to be borderline unbeatable. And I do think it's very cancerous design. Again, I do think the game would have been better off without a champion like Enchantress. And, you know, she exists for no other reason than just to make other people's lives worse. But what you can do. Everything and anything she does offensively is a waste of time. I think Kabam could have saved, like, you know, several weeks worth of wages for one of the devs if they just, you know, didn't give her any offensive abilities. I think I have seen her used an attack like twice. I think I have tried to use her attack like twice myself. And it's just awful. And like, admittedly, I'm not like an expert in using her, and I do know that if you do ramp her up, she can do something half decent. But again, why would you, and why bother? And it takes forever. And yeah, I think, you know, I don't think many people would mind if you just couldn't use her on attack. Nobody does anyway. Nobody does willingly. But yeah, defensively against. She's not as dangerous as she used to be without some sort of massive interaction and help from a node. That's why she's a bit lower. That said, obviously still a very nasty defender. We still see her often as a rank 3 and a rank 4 again. I do think the level of that threat has changed, and that's natural. Just about every defender being released, you know, people learn how to fight against her better. You know, counters come out, and every defender's role, you know, kind of decreases. For most part, and then often, you know, it's the ability to be a dual purpose champion what kind of helps them survive, or the fact that even if we have more counters, if it's, you know, still long enough type of fights, that we end up fighting against those champions, or it's still tricky enough to fight against her. But against Enchantress, it really isn't that. In general, it is, you know, bait out the initial spells and then go for a nuke, or bait out, you know, a couple of level 1s and then just go for a nuke, because she's not the tankiest. As long as you know how to deal with her and the AI and RNG doesn't completely mess you up, you can destroy her. So, I think to competitive players, she's significantly less scary than she used to be. But it is without a question that she still poses a threat. Something can always go wrong there. And there are some metas where, you know, she is a nightmare. But it's not every meta, every fight, all the time, everywhere. So, I do think that is warranting her to kind of fall down a little bit. And now, spot number 4, spot number 5, I gave to Dazzler. Because I think Dazzler is just going strength, strength, strength. Everything that I said about Negasonic, I think, you know, Dazzler kind of does better. I think Dazzler has more coherent ability kit to begin with. So I do think Dazzler is kind of like, feels better to use, number 1. Number 2, I do think that Dazzler does just about every or almost every matchup that Negasonic does. Granted, if she's awakened. Maybe with the exception of Bullseye. Bullseye is like, you know, the one kind of like key advantage Negasonic has. But, you know, if you do have your Dazzler at 6200, she can still do that matchup fairly well. But other than that, you know, Dazzler does for all those matchups plus a bunch more. Like, you know, you can use Dazzler well against Photon, which you could never dream of Negasonic. You can use Dazzler against Maestro, and just a whole wide variety of champions, because her damage can be crazy, and at level 2 can nuke just about everything. And her Dex, enhanced Dex abilities, very, very helpful. So yeah, basically, I do think Dazzler, for almost everything, is a better version of Negasonic. And she has proven to be effective against meta champions, against meta nodes in significant situations, and you do see her being used on. She's one of my most wanted champions to awaken right now in the game, and I hope I do soon, because I do want to rank 3, rank 4 Dazzler myself. And there you go. I don't think I need to say much more than that. I do think she has deserved the spot. Number 5. And we are moving to spot number 4, which is Shathra. Shathra is actually a very interesting story, because I didn't like her at first. And I did rank her up for prestige, because I had one of the lowest prestige in my alliance, and basically I knew I needed to improve it. And again, despite what many people think, nobody's forcing anybody to rank anything in high prestige alliances. But you are a part of the team, and you do not want to be letting your team down. So I was like weighing my options, and effectively Shathra kind of made the most sense. And I was like okay with it. I wasn't like super hyped, but I knew she's decent. But I am so happy I took her to rank 4 because she's so good. Obviously, defensively, she's not particularly strong, but overall, I would say she's a top 3 Mystic champion right now in the game. And I genuinely mean that. Now, she does not have the craziest damage output, but, you know, she's not slow or, you know, doesn't have like a bad damage either. The coolest thing about her is, though, that nobody's really immune to her wasps. Now, the wasps are energy damage, so you do need to obviously understand the interactions there, for instance, against somebody like Havoc, and so on and so forth. But the fact that she can just damage everybody, well, helps her so much. She's one of the better Serpent counters, she's solid against Dark Phoenix, she's great against Maestro, she's great against just about everybody in Cosmic Claws, but then you can go ahead and use her against Red Skull, you can use her against Sentinel, you can does well against Captain Britain, she does well against Zola, she does well against, you know, just about everybody. There are, again, multitude of reasons, the main being the fact that, you know, she can damage everybody well and fast. With the way she kind of ramps up, you basically just need to throw 1-2 level 1s, depending if there are any buffs involved, and then you can charge to your level 2s, get the vulnerabilities up, go for another level 1 or 2, and, you know, everything's just about dead. And you do that relatively fast. Again, Onslaught is another champion I love using Shathra against. In the previous meta, she was my like favorite Onslaught counter, to be honest. And then the second bit is Atrophy. She does have 2 different forms of buff control. The strongest one is coming from the 70% Atrophy, which is making opponents' buffs to expire faster. That's great. That doesn't always work, but it is good. In a bit of a sticky situations, you do have her Nullify. On the 4th light attack, you can sacrifice 30 Wasp to nullify a buff on the opponent. That is something that a lot of people don't even know, but she does have access to Nullify as well. It's not the best, but it's still serviceable. But yeah, for most of it, it's just the way she delivers damage. And yeah, she does have some cheesy interactions with being able to regenerate all of the energy damage that she has taken in the fight. But another cool thing is that you kind of can prevent yourself from, you know, overshooting the power and having been forced to drop that level 3. That's very nice. And with being able to do that, you basically can throw level 2, and then, you know, you're going to be just at the cusp of that level 1 immediately as well. And yeah, it's just the variety of the matchups that she takes. And I absolutely love my Shathra. I love the fact that I rank 4 my Shathra, and I am enjoying having rank 4 Shathra. So there's not much else to say about that. I think she deserves to be this high, genuinely. Not because I have some sort of bias. Just because. Great. Right. Let's move on to the top 3. The top 3 shouldn't be surprised at this point. So number 3 is Bullseye, because Bullseye has maintained its value somehow, despite, again, you know, Kabam releasing more and more counters to him. There's Gentle, that, you know, is effectively designed to counter him, and then there's Negasonic, that definitely does counter him, and then there's Dazzler, that can kind of counter him, but then there's Okoye, and then there's like more and more. But still, he consistently is one of the biggest defensive threats as well. And then there are like 1 in 4 metas where he's very good offensively. Now, don't get me wrong, in general, I do think he's still offensively undertuned, and I wish Kabam did increase his damage output. And regardless of what anybody tells you, he's not a crazy good attacker. But he can be a serviceable attacker. He is a good attacker when you're not in a rush, but that's typically not a competitive game mode. He is a decently good attacker for stuff like Alliance Wars, for instance, where you can boost up and modify your attack, then he can become great. He's a very good attack for like a bunch of questing and challenge scenarios, where we have used him repeatedly for all sorts of Epoch of Pain fights, so on and so forth, because, you know, being able to just completely bypass miss is great, and then very easy evade counter is awesome as well. The fact that he has no buffs, doesn't rely on debuffs, has access to instant bleeds is good. His offensive kit is very, very good as long as you can modify his attack in one way, shape, or form. And then when a node like that comes around, where you do get some sort of attack increase on him, then he turns into a serviceably good attacker. Like previously we had Stunning Reflection, Bleeding Shock, for instance. He got that 40% Fury. All of a sudden, he was a serviceable and good attacker. Now we're going to get Invade Mentor with his guaranteed crits and Invade. He is going to be an amazing attacker, but he's also going to be a crazy good, amazing defender. And here is going to be the reason why I think a lot of people might want to like resist this placement and why I will maintain it. It's mainly because you always kind of have to have a counter against him. And the way he is designed, kind of similar to Domino. Domino is God knows how old champion. And she's still very much so relevant. Because, you know, you can turn around and use Domino offensively. Bullseye, again, maybe not as often, but still has that capability. But he does have more utility than Domino still. But the point is, unless you do get a counter to Bullseye, you're just screwed and dead. Like, and that's an auto loss. And he's one of those champions. Overall, I think we are going to see Bullseye in this game for a very long time. If you have recently pulled up Bullseye, I still think you are absolutely fine and safe to rank him up. He is a staple in this game, whether you like him, whether you don't. Now, I personally don't like him as a defender, but still, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. And again, he's one of those champions that's always present, always there, always a threat, you know, often gets banned and often gets drafted and even more often gets used. So, I don't really see that changing much, to be honest, because of the threat that he is. There you go. Spot number 2, and this is going to be perhaps even more controversial, but I'm giving it to Deathless Thanos. And I think he's amazing. I think Deathless Thanos is one of the 4 best champions in the game right now. I think the top 4 champions in the game right now are Onslaught, Serpent, Deathless Thanos, and Photon. I mean, that might change, you know, soon, potentially. But I think those are currently just about the 4 best, most popular, most used, you know, champions that we have. Obviously, this means you know who is rank 1, and rank 1 is going to be Serpent. But the reason why I chose that, and this really can come down to personal preference. And that's what I tell people as well. Deathless Thanos is better attacker than Serpent is in the short form content in the Battleground. If it's coming down to Alliance War or just about anywhere else in the game, I do think that either equal or Serpent is potentially better offensively because of the amount of abilities he has. But Deathless Thanos is faster. He has a ton going on for him. Obviously access to armor, shatter and armor break, being able to chain in heavy to your basic attack, access to a ton of buffs, and you know, great damage output overall with those furies, and improved combat power rate, and ability to bypass miss and evade with his panics, and access to unstoppable. And he basically was a chase champion for an entire year. Every single time we saw some nasty thing that we need to collect the Deathless pieces for, ultimately led down to this champion, and he did not disappoint. He was 100% worth the chase. And Kabam did a successful job. They did make one of the most dangerous champions. And obviously that immediately, again, I can easily see an argument of him being at the spot number 1. To me, he's at spot number 2, and portion of that comes from the nature of the new defenders, which he does not necessarily counter the best. Portion of that comes to, you know, him being defensively less capable than Serpent, and Serpent being offensively equally capable everywhere aside from Battlegrounds. But both of them have their pros and cons, for sure. I do think he's well worth the chase. I do think he's well worth the investment. And I do see him become very persistent and consistent part of the game. You know, in between his protections, he can be a very good stall option, but he can also be, you know, safe offensive option, especially if it's not a game mode where you care about the remaining health. He does have the ability to recover chip damage. That, however, is great if you care about your remaining health. And he has access to, you know, a ton of crazy good interactions. That's about it. I don't have much bad to say about Champion. hard to say much bad about an amazing champion like this. So I do think Deathless Thanos is, one of the top 2 champions released last year. I think he's one of the top 4 champions in the game, period. The champion that I still kind of give the crown to at the moment is still the Serpent. Because then I kind of have covered a lot of this, but Serpent's just bullshit champion, man. I think Thanos is something that you do when you deliberately make a very powerful two-way champion. I think Serpent is so stupid that they accidentally made him good offensively. I think when Kabam was designing him, they were just throwing abilities by the shovel load at the wall, and they somehow eventually made him a good attacker. But the focus there was, let's just make the most bullshit imbecile defender that we can possibly find. I think that is genuinely how Serpent was created. Let's give him death immunity, let's give him 50 other immunities, let's have his ability power rate, be unable to be reduced by, to 0, let's give him resistances to bleed effects, let's give him resistances to power steal and whatnot, and then let's, make him shut off away, let's make his specials undexable, let's give him pierce, let's give him resistances, let's give him great base stats, unblockable special attacks, cold snap damage, more damage if opponents have armor and they try to tank the damage. Let's give him again resistance to power drain. Let's just bullshit, man. It's like a 40-year-old that is creating, a Lego spaceship, and all of a sudden it has all the lasers, all the shields, all the wheels, all the everything, and it's just some sort of chimera of like 50 different Lego kits. That's what Serpent is. That is it meant to be for defense. And then obviously the last year, or majority of the last year, Kabam has been making bucket loads selling counters to Serpent because hardly any existed in the game prior to that. And now champions that are objectively mid have value and are in our decks or are getting ranked just because they happen to be good Serpent counter. That's literally like, if the champion's fairly mid, but they counter Serpent, they're good now, like in a Spiral. Like, if Serpent didn't exist, we wouldn't care about Spiral. Like, facts. Like, if Serpent did not exist, we would not care about Spiral in the slightest. But we care about Spiral now. And many of us have a rank 3 Spiral now because Serpent exists. And, that kind of showcases the stupidity of this champion. But what makes him the best champion? Because again, obviously now he has counters. Even though just about nobody can nuke Serpent, aside from like Tiger, I think. On like equal ranks, there's just about nothing that can, completely nuke him like you could with Bullseye or something. The thing that really does make him as valuable as he is, even in Battlegrounds, he's a serviceable attacker. And outside of Battlegrounds, he's crazy. A champion that effectively switches on true focus, before opponent can throw their first special attack and then maintains it the entire fight. Champion that every special attack is going to be unblockable. Champion has access to like, different types of burst damage, and once you ramp him up to like massive amounts of like, yellow and whatever numbers. A champion has 50,000 immunities and, other resistances and protections. Just bypasses a ton of nodes. And you give him immortality as well. And you give him power gain. And you make him easy to play. I think it's crazy on attack. I think if you did Necropolis with Serpent, you probably, got convinced about that. But it's beyond that. Epoch of Pain, and when we had the Grandmaster Gauntlet, the new version, Serpent was like one of the MVPs because, he just showed exactly how broken he is. I still think he's a bullshit character. There's no way in the world that Serpent was balanced, or that Serpent is balanced. Because realistically, let's face it, we got like Deathless King Root, for instance. that Cabal marked as balanced. There's no way that Deathless King Root has the right to stand on the same planet as Serpent does. We have like the Destroyer or the Leader. There's no way that Serpent is equally balanced to Leader. Oh, bullshit. The guy is just OP. So is Thanos. But again, I think Thanos is like OP by design and very deliberately so. What I think Serpent is that they made insanely stupid OP defender that somehow became also a solid great attacker for the rest of the game. But I definitely think they overdid with Serpent more than with Thanos. So that's why I'm putting him higher up. Let me know what you guys think. So here is the full list, the new list. New 2024 ranking. Serpent, Thanos, Bullseye, Shathra, Dazzler, Enchantress, Nefaria, Prowler, Dust, Jack, Negasonic, Spiral, Scream, and the previous one you already saw. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all